Hello and welcome to the Beyond 6 Seconds podcast. I'm your host, Carolyn Keel, and on today's episode, I'm speaking with Brianne Leeson. Brianne is a writer, artist, and voice actor from Dallas, Texas. She's the creator of the queer supernatural comedy audio drama, Today's Lucky Winner. Brianne was diagnosed as autistic and with ADHD at age 30, and she has since become a passionate advocate for autism acceptance and representation in media. Brianne, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you here and to talk about late diagnosis and all of that, because I myself am late diagnosed. So always happy to learn about other people's experiences with that as well. So I guess, when did you realize or start thinking that you might be neurodivergent?
Yeah, so that word had barely entered my vocabulary by the beginning of the pandemic.
Mhm.
I'd say a couple months in, I started behaving in ways that were really unfamiliar to me.
Mhm.
I had all these routines in place to help myself focus, help myself not be late doing things, help with basic stuff to keep my life in order. And a lot of those were predicated on having people over to my house and stuff that wasn't happening anymore. And without those in place, I couldn't focus on anything. Like, I couldn't focus on things I enjoyed. I was having what I thought were panic attacks. And I had been told they were panic attacks my whole life. But I was like, well, I'm just a jerk who has panic attacks because and that's what I told myself, because they were just an undirected sort of anger to them. And I was like, for the first time, I think I had the space to stop and go, I don't think that's what's happening here. Like, I had been depressed before, and it wasn't depression.
Mhm.
It was as though, since I didn't have my usual routines, I had become untethered. Like, the whole Jenga tower of things I had to help me function had just completely fallen, and I didn't have the capacity to put it all back together in this new reality. So I started looking at what the possibilities could be. I started talking to my therapist. My therapist has ADHD.
Mhm.
And I was like, some of this ADHD stuff, like, I didn't know. I only knew the stereotype of the very hyper little boy who interrupted all the time and was very loud. And in just educating myself, which is one of my favorite things about being autistic, is that if I have interest in something, I will go down all the rabbit holes and go learn about it. And it's fun. But I was like, I think I have ADHD. And I talked to my mom. My mom was like, oh yeah, a doctor actually diagnosed me with that like a couple years ago. And I was like, that would be real good to know.
Yeah. Wow.
It'd be great to know because it's hereditary.
Mhm.
But my therapist has ADHD, and he's known me since I was a teenager. And he was like, yeah, why don't you work on getting someone to like assess that and see someone, and I'm just going to treat it as though you already know, and we're going to work on stuff to help you out in that capacity, understanding your brain better.
Mhm.
So the first doctor I went to was a terrible experience.
Mm.
I got told I was severely depressed, and that my only option was to go on antidepressants. And I was like, I'm not depressed though. Like, I know. And that was a dead end. And I had to kind of stop for a little bit, because I'm like, why does no one believe me? And finally, my partner went looking and said, hey, you can start this assessment by filling out this info to give to them. And then they'll say, okay, we think it'll be worth your time to see you.
Mhm.
And I got a call the next morning going, hey, we think it's really worth your time to actually make an appointment for an assessment.
Mhm.
So I did, and there was such relief when I finally had the appointment. And the doctor's like, you very clearly have ADHD. You have all of these complex coping strategies that you've learned to help sort of function, and they're not here anymore because of the pandemic. Like, a lot of them aren't. So of course you're having more trouble focusing. And that helped quite a bit. I chose to go on medication to help me. And there was a marked difference in things. And it gave me sort of the space to come up with new strategies to help myself just function every day. I finally had that space to think about it. But that wasn't quite all the puzzle.
I feel like the pandemic probably uncovered or got a lot of people questioning, well, a lot of things, I guess, in general, but especially around, their neurodivergence, because as you said, your routines are disrupted or your life is disrupted. It's interesting because you started talking about feeling or experiencing what you always thought were like panic attacks and things like that. So I guess in retrospect, do you feel like maybe those were more like autistic meltdowns or shutdowns?
100% autistic meltdowns. And historically, looking back at my life, I was far more prone to shutdowns because my meltdowns were seen as me misbehaving, and it was not safe to have them. And I was like, I don't quite understand why I'm having them now. But my therapist brought up a good point and said, you're safe. Your brain knows you're safe.
Yeah.
You're at home. You're with people who love you. Your brain is safe to do the thing that it's doing to let you know, hey, there's too much. I've taken too much. I can't do this, which has been interesting because I shut down far less than I did for the other 30 years of my life.
Wow.
Just knowing like, hey, I'm safe. This is not a tantrum. Like, it's not a direction. Everybody here knows I'm not mad at them. I've just had enough. And having that support, it's really changed because I rarely have shutdowns anymore. And that's historically what I would have for 30 years. That
is interesting that it's the whole safety, because I think that it sometimes gets viewed as, well, why is someone having the meltdown when their home? Is something wrong at home? It's like, no, home is like the safe place where you can, actually release your feelings and express yourself and, just sort of react. You don't have to hold it in.
Exactly.
You got the ADHD diagnosis and started treatment for that, but you said that that wasn't everything necessarily. So how did you kind of get on the track and start thinking about potentially autism as a possibility?
Yeah, I started following a bunch of accounts that would share research about ADHD, and naturally a lot of them had information about autism also, since so many people have both. Yeah. And the first thing that really had me going, okay, was something about hyperlexia. And I was like, what's this? Let me look at that. And reading it was like reading about my childhood. I started reading, at least to some degree, at 2. Wow. By the time I got to kindergarten, I was reading at like a middle school level. And they were like, cool. Nothing suspicious here. She doesn't communicate with the other kids well while speaking, but she can read really well. That's super. But a lot of how I spoke was mimicking phrases I'd heard. And I couldn't use those words in isolation. I couldn't. But I was doing a lot of mimicry of stuff. At 2, if I wanted to talk to someone, I would say, we need to have a discussion. Because I'd heard an adult say it. I was like, oh, if I want attention and someone to talk to me, that's what I do. But looking at that and looking at 80% of people who are hyperlexic are also autistic, I was like, those numbers certainly suggest that I might be autistic. And I think the thing that really pushed me to was seeing a very well done Venn diagram of ADHD and autism and noticing just how much of the autism side I related to. Far too much to be coincidental. And now looking at it, knowing more about autism and knowing more about what repetitive behaviors look like, knowing more of half of the things I do for hobbies are stimming, knowing all of that, it's the entire autism side. So that pushed me to say, oh, I need to look into this. Like, I need to.
Yeah. And it sounds like what you're describing is like echolalia or echolalia. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but in terms of sort of repeating and learning those phrases from either books or hearing them, which is another very common thing with autism. And it's interesting how that coincides with hyperlexia as well at a young age.
Yeah, that part has been so interesting for me. My degree is actually in linguistics.
Oh.
So the language learning part about Gestalt learning, where you're learning the big chunks of phrases and stuff versus the small components first, I was like, oh, yeah, that's how I learn. And like when I'm learning other languages, that's also how I learn those other languages.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I only recently heard about Gestalt learning. Like I had never heard of it until actually, started learning more about autism and speech and learning language. I'm like, oh, it's like a wholly different way to learn language. And I don't think one that's taught in schools very often. I mean, maybe more so now because I'm starting to hear about it. Interesting. So then what was your experience like getting the autism diagnosis? Because I know sometimes that can be tricky too, to find the right service or provider to be able to do that with adult women, especially.
It was hard. There wasn't anyone locally who seemed to want to do screenings for adults that used metrics that weren't just, here's the same test we give children.
Yeah.
Bring in your parents, do this. When you're done, sign up with one of our ABA therapists.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I was like, and I was getting really discouraged because I was like, I don't know that I'm going to find anyone. But my partner found someone who would do telehealth stuff. As all of it goes, it's astronomically priced just because that's the world we live in right now. But we saved up to make it happen. For me, I sought an official diagnosis because I knew for myself, I think with my own trauma, I would not believe it without someone who was an expert and a professional telling me, yes.
Yeah.
Like it's not in your head. Yes. So I chose to go that route for myself because I knew I would not give myself that compassion of being like, hey, this is true. You can make these adjustments if I didn't. So we found someone and I started doing the vast number of screenings and tests and stuff over a few weeks. And I actually was having to stop in the middle of a lot of these to go, this is what everyone does, right? Like on this question, everyone works this way. And it was emotional just going through those questionnaires. So I'm like, everybody does this, right? And I was asking my husband, who was like, I don't know, I do that too. Well, since then, we've discovered, oh, he's autistic also. So he was not much help giving me, like, I don't know, I do that. Seems normal. And even with all that, I was having a lot of imposter syndrome during that. But while I was working on it, we had a big freeze here in Texas. It was that February that it was all over national news that the power had gone out, the power grid had gone down. We were one of the few lucky ones who still had power. But I was like, I don't know, maybe I'm not autistic. Maybe I'm answering these in a way to make it so it says I'm autistic because I've researched too much. And I was doing all of that. And I found something that seems inconsequential, but I found myself out of hot sauce in the middle of this freeze and unable to go get more. I had trouble eating anything until we could get to the store again. Because when I would think of same foods, I was like, yeah, can you eat like chicken nuggets and someone who does this? But I'm sensory seeking, and without something being heavily spiced with hot sauce, I'm not going to eat it. So I struggled to eat for like 4 days during this freeze because we couldn't get more. And I was like, I want to eat and I can't make myself eat this. It is a sensory nightmare. And I was like, that's the moment I said, I'm autistic. Because I don't want to be doing this right now, but like, I can't help it. So that was really the moment where I accepted it before my diagnosis was even final.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because even with the concept of same foods, I guess people tend to think of autistic same foods as like very bland foods. Like those tend to be my safe foods. I always eat like the same soggy bland cereals or like that's the type of stuff I like. But I guess that's part of the reason why they say autism is a spectrum.
And also learning that a lot of the concepts are like very Anglo-centric too. So I'm a quarter Puerto Rican. My grandma lived with us growing up. Like my same foods are like rice and beans, like Puerto Rican rice and beans. And like I always have it in my fridge. Like I make it every week, all the time. And to me, I just thought, that's how I was raised. You always have it in the fridge. I do have to have it or I'll have trouble finding anything to eat.
Mm-hmm.
But even a lot of the ideas about what same foods look like, what these repetitive behaviors look like, it's very plugged into one type of person.
Yeah. And that's what sometimes makes autism so challenging to diagnose if you're, working with someone who isn't like a little white boy, like like middle class, or that demographic that most of the research has been based on for so many years. So you wound up getting your autism diagnosis after that. Yeah. I mean, how has life changed since then? Have you been able to make, either adjustments or accommodations for yourself, or has it sort of changed the way that you think about yourself?
It has changed absolutely everything. Just absolutely everything. I'm restructuring my life to be more friendly to my brain, because there are so many things where I thought I was just bad at doing stuff, like grown-up stuff that's easy for other people. I got told that, like, well, everyone hates doing that. Like everyone hates doing this, but you just have to. But no, learning that no, it is actually harder for you than the people who are telling you that it's just an annoying thing and you have to live with it. So there's so much that I've changed. Like I've restructured how I do things. I've lost a lot of friends since then because I've set boundaries that I said, hey, I dealt with this for a long time. I thought it was not a big deal. And I've lost friends, but I've also grown a lot closer to the ones who are like, yeah, no, I get that. Like, I understand why you need that. I'm going to do my best. So yeah, everything's changed. And some days I think I have a better handle on things. And then other days I'll remember something that happened and I go, oh, that was because I'm autistic. Like they did this because I'm autistic, or they didn't listen, or I didn't understand that they got subtext out of this. Like I learn all the time. Like there are things that I thought like, oh, I'm saying this. And then I learned from someone who's holistic, like, no, when we say that, it's never a good thing. So I think the one example is like me learning when I want to know why someone's doing something a certain way, because maybe I'm not understanding everything, I'll ask, so why would you do it this way? And someone got upset and I said, oh, now understanding about subtext, they go, do you think I was asking because I thought the way you're doing it didn't make sense? No, I want to know why, so I can learn more. I want to know why this is the way you do this. And they were like, oh, for holistic people, that's almost always telling a person that you think the way they're doing it is bad. And I was like, oh no, this explains 3 or 4 different situations that I can recollect at the moment. All right. And I keep finding myself learning things like that. So I thought I was really good at masking and really good at sort of interpreting things, but I was not as good as I thought.
Yeah, the social interactions are just, there's so many challenging things around it. Like for me, it's like everything is like mapped out in my head. Like I tend to be very sensitive to that. So I'm probably like over on the other direction where like I just literally don't talk much at all in social situations. I'm like, I just will sit here and listen because I don't know what to say or when to participate. And sometimes I'll just completely say the wrong thing. That whole intersection of like the words and the tone, and then like some people take it one way. I don't know, it's very complicated. I spend a lot of time like thinking through like, all right, how am I going to have this conversation
constantly? And that's another thing, I thought everyone did that.
Yeah.
And I think the best way I've described it to people is like, it's like I'm being given these math problems to solve while I'm talking to you. And I suck at math.
Yeah.
And when you start adding more people into the setting, you have all these other people giving me more math problems. And again, I thought it was like that for everyone. I usually find myself talking a lot in the social situations and usually being put in charge of things, even though I don't want to. Like learning I'm autistic explained why so many people were like, you're really assertive, and you're kind of blunt and kind of mean.
Mm.
It's those thin slice judgments
Mhm.
of like, this is your face, you're not looking at me like this, you were really direct about something. And it's like, I was direct with you because I respect you and it's the truth. And I thought that was better. And I was very concerned for a long time, even like with my clothes have changed because I'm like, I didn't actually like doing all these things because they were uncomfortable.
Mm.
But one of the big things whenever I got clothes was, okay, make sure you're making yourself look more approachable.
Oh.
And I was like, hey, a lot of people don't think about that. But I always got told I look scary, I look mean. So I was very focused on trying to look approachable.
Mhm.
And just a lot of stuff, I was like, why didn't it ever click to me that that's not what everyone else was doing?
Yeah, and part of the challenge is that the whole concept of, every time you say something, it's like, oh, everybody does that or everybody feels like that, which is people trying to I guess they're trying to make you feel better. But at the same time, it makes you like, oh, well, I guess everybody does that. But people don't realize it's not to the same extent. Like everybody feels nervous in a social situation where they don't know everyone. It's like, well, okay, maybe, but not everybody has to like stripped out the conversation and have like all the topics like pre-planned before they get there, so that they can function at this thing.
Not everyone is Googling it.
Yes. Not everyone's like hanging out in the bathroom taking breaks like every 20 minutes. So, yeah. Even for me, like I had a certain degree of imposter syndrome around my own autism diagnosis and still do sometimes. It's like, well, maybe everybody feels that way. Maybe that's normal.
I was having a particularly bad imposter syndrome night the other night.
Mhm.
And I was like, maybe the doctors were wrong. And then one of our smoke alarms chirped. And I immediately was like, if it chirps again, I'm going to pull out my spine and throw it at the wall. I swear to God.
Yeah.
And one of my partners was like, I'm on it. I got it. Don't worry. But I was like, all right, that made my spine go,
Mhm.
and I'm definitely autistic.
Mhm. That's the worst with the chirping, because we had a situation like that years ago where for some reason in our house, like our smoke detectors were they were too far up for me to reach to like easily change the battery. And like it was going off like intermittently for like 2 or 3 days. And I was just like totally beside myself, like not even like functioning.
I would rather the smoke alarms just scream, feed me batteries.
Yeah.
I would rather them just scream that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be easier to handle, I think, than that like randomized cheeping noise. Like, oh my God. Yeah. So I relate specifically to that one. Oh my gosh. And so you are a voice actor. You do a lot of podcast and audio drama work, and you created the show called Today's Lucky Winner. And it has a main character who's autistic, which is interesting because I think you started the show before you got your diagnosis, if I'm understanding.
Yeah. So in getting my diagnosis and like working things out in therapy, I realized, oh my God, the two main characters are very clearly my autism and my ADHD. like very clearly. And I said, well, I have to put the name on. I have to give them those names to describe them. I
Mhm.
have to do that now because there's so many characters that I latched onto, so many comfort characters I had growing up that are very, very clearly coded as autistic with autistic traits, but no one ever called them that.
Yeah.
And I think if there had been a single time where someone had said, hey, Willow from Buffy is autistic,
Mhm.
or, hey, like this character is autistic, I would have known earlier. I would have known far earlier because I would see people that reminded me of myself that weren't just a straight white little boy
Mhm.
being called autistic.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, it's important that I put the names on it. It's very important. So I decided to just casually mention in an episode, like, that character is autistic. And now I've had her have a meltdown in a situation and had the ADHD character help her. I very deliberately shown that, and then also shown she's not just a list of deficits.
Mhm.
This is part of why she's so great. So I actually had someone who listens to the show reach out, and they're 17, and they said, hey, like I went to go get an assessment and I got diagnosed with ADHD. Up next is the autism assessment, but with everything I've read and everything I've done, like, I know I'm autistic.
Mhm.
And I see myself in Dawn, who's the autistic character. And then they thanked me. And they're like, this is probably one of the most important podcasts I've ever listened to in my life. Thank you. And I was weeping, of course.
Mhm.
I was weeping, but it's like, this is why I wanted to name it. Like, that's why it's important.
Yeah, I feel like the only autistic characters in media, and I don't even know if I'm even familiar with that many that are explicitly named as autistic just throughout the decades of media I've been consuming. They're all like that very flat sort of singular stereotype, like basically the Rain Man
Or
stereotype.
or a robot or an alien.
Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
I'm a Trekkie and I'm like,
Yeah.
I love Data.
Oh yeah.
Data's the best. And then, like, a very common joke when I'm watching Star Trek with my partner, if Spock's involved, Spock will say something and my partner will be like, okay, Brianne. Okay, Brianne.
Mhm.
So yeah, we don't get to be human a lot of the time. And when we are human, it is the Rain Man stereotype.
Mhm. Yeah. And then meanwhile, there's so many other characters that are autistic coded or that the autistic community tends to regard as
Mhm.
this is likely an autistic character. But yeah, it makes a difference to come out and say it, especially so that you get other representations of what autism and ADHD look like in people
Mhm.
so that, listeners like yours can recognize themselves and be like, oh, this is what autism looks like. Because it wasn't until I started reading blogs about women who were writing about what it looked like in girls and in women. And it's like, well, was this your experience as a girl? And it's very different from the stereotype. Like I never thought of being like called very sensitive and intense as like autism characteristics. I'm like, well, I guess I'm just like too sensitive. But then I'm like, oh, okay, well, that could be autism.
Yeah.
It is really important to have that kind of representation. And I feel like there are all these shows centered around autism with like more autistic characters. I don't watch them. I hear about them. I'm not sure that I would even enjoy a lot of them. Like
Yeah,
Love
like
on the
there's
Spectrum. Like I'm like, I don't
I
know.
Love on the Spectrum, I tried and I'm like, this is made for holistic people.
Yeah.
I forget what it's called. There's a new one on Amazon. And in an article from the creator, he said, well, I consulted with Autism Speaks. And I was like, I'm out.
No. Yeah.
um, so yeah, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of media that actually names autism.
Mhm. Yeah. And a lot of shows are trying to do the right thing by like, having a consultant, let's say they're not from Autism Speaks, but like somewhere else who are like
Yeah.
actually autistic consultants and maybe even autistic actors. But if you don't have autistic writers and producers, like you're still going to have that bias because whoever's writing the lines, even if the actor is
Right.
autistic, it doesn't come out the same.
Right. I think having an autistic person using language the way we do, I think it very clearly changes
Mhm.
how things are. I think it's so easy to make someone a caricature of what the writer perceives autism to look like when they're not autistic.
Mhm. Yeah, oh, definitely. And so your show, you're a voice actor on the show and you're write the show. So you have a lot of creative direction into the show. So yeah, I mean, that's really powerful to be able to explicitly name those characters and say that one is ADHD, one is autistic, and just have people identify with them. Tell me a little bit about the show, because we described it, I think, as a queer supernatural audio drama. So tell me about like how you got the idea for the plot and how you put that together.
Yeah, so one thing being both ADHD and autistic, things never come to me in order. I have notebooks that look like ramblings of just someone who you're like, did someone write this while under the influence? No, it's just I have random scenes and random thoughts and I write them down. Some of them are drawings. I also learned what hyperphantasia is after my autism diagnosis. That is when the picture in your head is very vivid. So when I picture something, it's extremely vivid. Like I can see it. I can imagine what the smells and the sounds are like. And I got on the elliptical one day because exercising is one of my stims.
Mm-hmm.
And a little bit in, I had the very first scene of my show pop into my head.
Wow.
And then I went, oh, well, this drawing I did of this crusty punk lady, goes with this. And this little concept I wrote out goes with this. So I got done working out and I was like, let's go write all this down. And yeah, so the show follows Dawn Menendez, who after a freak hair straightener, smoke alarm sprinkler accident, dies and finds herself at the DMV, which is the Department of Mishaps and Violence. She is the 777th soul reached by her Reaper that day. So she has won a year back on Earth in a different body to do whatever she wants before she goes to her place in the afterlife. And she is chaperoned by her Grim Reaper, who I voice. Mm-hmm. But before Dawn is sent for her year as a lucky winner to go back to Earth, she learns that she did something in her life that means that she's going to go to a hell dimension after her year is over. And she can't imagine what she did. So her first night back on Earth, things happen, and her Grim Reaper, Rita, says, "Hey, dude, I think you were actually murdered." So if she can prove to the DMV that she was murdered, she gets to be reincarnated and avoid hell. Oh. So it is her and her Grim Reaper, Rita, who I voice, who is ADHD incarnate. All of my self-medicating ADHD behaviors she encapsulates, but they try to solve her murder before the year is over. It's funny. It constantly gets described as chaotic whenever anyone talks about the show. The fantasy of it that I try to kind of show now is, hey, what if we lived in a world where if you are ADHD or autistic, people understood you and didn't see you as a list of deficits and did their very best to be the best friend to you they could be. So the show's all over the place. There's a pharmaceutical company run by vampires. The guy you meet in the afterlife is named Kyle. There are shape-shifting demons. There's a goat man who sings songs. It's all over the place, but it brings me a lot of joy, and I make it with my cast of friends, including one who composes original music for the show. It's really fun.
It's cool. And so does it take place, and you mentioned demons and shapeshifters, is that like the spirit realm, or does it take place on Earth?
It takes place in Dallas, Texas. Yeah, I kind of also wanted to show sort of like, here are a bunch of queer people who are the people who are here in Texas, who regardless of what gets voted in, regardless of what happens, like these people live here too. So it's showing people like this is the part of Dallas that I'm in. Like these are my sort of people.
Yeah, that sounds really like creative and fascinating. And that's such a cool story because it's like a little bit of true crime and like a lot supernatural and like a lot of different themes. That's really...
Yeah, I think one of the most succinct descriptions I've seen someone on Reddit describe it as was like Buffy, but for stoners. So I was like, that's fair. That's totally fair.
And does it run in seasons, or how do you structure the show?
It does run in seasons. We're about to put out episode 10 of season 2. There are 30 episodes for season 1. Wow. I originally had planned this as a comic book, and I switched gears to audio drama, but I hadn't really listened to audio drama when I had started doing it, apart from a few like BBC radio plays. So I was like, yeah, I'll just write this many episodes for a season, which is not the number people usually do for a season of audio drama. But I think one of the gifts of writing being my special interest is like, no, I can pump out a bunch of scripts and get this written without a lot of problem. It's fun. If I don't get to spend an hour or two on it every day, it's like, it wasn't a very good day, was it?
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. That's great. Yeah, that's great to be able to write so much and to have it come so easily and just really energize you as well.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you've gotten, really good response from the show. I mean, you mentioned that one listener who started going for her ADHD and autism assessments after listening to that. I guess any other responses? Like, do you have a lot of fans kind of contact you or follow you?
We have a Patreon now, and part of the Patreon rewards is getting access to the Discord for the show. And most of the people are ADHD and or autistic. They were listening before I even named the characters that.
Mm.
And it's like, we really do find each other. Like, we find stuff that resonates with us. Like, I know there are a lot of artists and writers that since my diagnosis, I'm like, oh, hey, they were autistic too. Like, I love the Talking Heads. Oh yeah, David Byrne.
Mhm.
Like just thinking about things I enjoy and thinking about those people are very likely autistic. And that's been really cool just to see people who are the kind of people that wouldn't have been represented otherwise, like interested in the show. Things have gone so well that my partners and I started a production company so we could do more audio dramas, more podcasts. So I have a new idea that my brain is stuck on. So I've also been writing a second audio drama
Wow.
lately. But yeah, the show's going really well and the response has been way better than I could have ever imagined. I think writing the show helped me sort of process what I needed to even come to my own autism diagnosis.
Interesting. Yeah. So is it sort of the act of writing? Because if you're writing an autistic character, even if you maybe you're not aware when you start out that the character is autistic, but I guess sort of writing in your own experiences and seeing it reflected in this other character, is that helpful to help process it?
Yeah, because even toward the beginning, I described her as like, didn't have really a lot of friends, not because she's not likable at all. It was just almost easier not to because people were kind of exhausting and she would rather focus on things that she likes, like playing video games and like one of her special interests are the tardigrades and
Mhm.
uh just a bunch of stuff that I'm like, oh, I was writing about how I feel about a lot of things.
Mhm.
Like basically for her, she's like, I could go try to connect with people more, but that doesn't usually go well. So being lonely is a little easier. So I was like, oh, I was working on some stuff, wasn't I?
Mhm.
So now when I write something, I'm like, uh-oh, no, no, I don't think that's actually me. I think I'm just writing that.
Mhm.
Okay, because sometimes I have to go, hold on.
Yeah, it makes you more aware as you're, kind of thinking
Yeah,
like,
yeah. I was like, where did that come from, Brianne?
"Hmm, yeah, very cool." Yeah. Wow, well, that sounds great. So where can people find your audio drama, Today's Lucky Winner, and listen to it?
Yeah, it's on all the podcast platforms. Our social media is just at Lucky Winner Show, but we're on we're on all the big platforms. We're 10 episodes in. It's hard for me to remember how far in we are because I've written so far ahead.
Yeah. Mhm.
I'm like,
Mhm.
hold on, wait, which one are we actually on?
Yeah.
Episode 10 will be out as of June 1st. You have to start from the beginning. Our sound quality gets better as we go because it was 5 different people in 5 different places trying to all sound like we're in the same room
Wow.
when everyone has much differing equipment, but we've figured stuff out. Everyone's been so great working on sound quality and learning.
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge with editing. And then with audio dramas, you obviously have like, the music that gets put in like sound effects and any other sort of things to
So
fill it in. It's a lot.
so
Mhm.
much stuff. I'll see other podcasters show their editing sort of screen and it's got like, here are 5 tracks. And I'm like, oh, 5.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But both my partners work on the show with me. My husband does the sound design and he's also autistic and picked it up so quickly. He's like, yeah, this is like the Nickelodeon movie maker I used as a kid. I can figure this out.
Mhm.
And now he's like, hey, I simulated a car crash, or hey, I did this. And I'm like, how did you do that?
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, well, that sounds fantastic. Like a lot of really great work goes into it, and it sounds like just a really, really great show. So yeah, I'll put a link in the show notes to the main website for it, and obviously you can get it wherever you find your podcasts. Brienne, I really enjoyed talking with you today. Thank you
Yeah,
so much
thank
for
you.
sharing your story about ADHD and autism, and sharing your experiences around creating just such a unique audio drama that's really inspiring and really helping a lot of people, it sounds like, which is really, really awesome. As we close out, is there anything else that you'd like our listeners to know or anything that they can help or support you with?
I just always, whenever I talk about autism, is that if it resonates with somebody, the autism or the ADHD part, please look into it. Maybe not an official diagnosis because that has its own hurdles, but please look into it, because it is very freeing to know that there's nothing wrong with you. And I think it would save a lot of autistic lives if more autistic people knew they were autistic.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, self-diagnosis is valid. We always say that in the community because there are so many obstacles and challenges a lot of times to diagnosis. But yeah, absolutely look into it. Just learning about it is really eye-opening because it's so different. Likely it's very different than any perception you have in your mind before you learn anything about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thanks so much, Brianne, for talking with me today. It was so fun.
Yeah, thank you.